A protest is moving through the streets. Banners, vuvuzelas, phones held high to record it all. They are not chanting about prizes or portals or load shedding. They are chanting about him, about people like him, a foreigner. Minutes later, he's on the ground. He survives. Thousands of others across South Africa in that same week will not be so fortunate. I never thought that it's possible to reach this far, but you guys are making me to believe that it's possible. So if you are watching my videos for the first time, I'm kindly asking if you can subscribe and like the video. We are trying to reach 1 million subscribers this year. I know we are still sitting on 180,000 subscribers, but I know that by God's grace, we can grow bigger. So please, I'm kindly asking if you can subscribe and like the video. Like the video.
You're a I will never be quiet. I'll choose her before you. Don't come here and tell us about it. I'm born South African, so you take your medical insurance and go. She's not South African. That's why she's here waiting with you.
Today we are going to ask the question South Africa has been carefully trained not to ask. When the mob marches on the foreigners' shop, who initiates the protest and who gets rich after all has been done?
Since 2007, almost 20 years.
Oh, you are part of us now. You are no longer a German.
Those outside of South Africa, when they hear what's happening, they barely understand the logic behind all of it. As some of the things, they are not adding up. They see Africans chasing away Africans, and yet there is a town in South Africa where by design no black person is allowed to live or even work. It has its own flag, its own money, its own borders. It has existed for over 30 years, and in all that time, no mob has ever marched to Orania. Why is the rage that destroys a Mozambican's tax shop so strangely polite when it reaches the gates of white-only town? One social media user said, this is a disgrace. They were allowed to basically create their own country within a country under the African people's noses. Only in Africa can this be possible to happen. It's an insult and a complete disrespect for the African people. The situation in South Africa where other Africans are being chased away is not a simple story of hate. It is a story of a country built on a foundation that was designed deliberately by engineers of apartheid to make black bodies useful but never welcome. It is a story of unemployment so deep that 4 out of every 10 working age South Africans cannot find a job. It is a story of politicians who have learned that blaming a foreigner wins more votes than fixing a broken hospital. And here is what nearly every economist researcher studying this crisis agrees on. These problems cannot be honestly blamed on immigrants. Foreign nationals make up a small fraction of South Africa's population, and research consistently shows they create jobs through entrepreneurship. But desperate people don't always reach for statistics. They reach for the explanation that's closest, simplest, and loudest. And in South Africa, for 30 years, the loudest explanation, amplified now by social media, by opportunistic politicians and vigilant leaders, has been, is the foreigners' fault. Are black Africans the only foreigners in South Africa? That's the question that I would ask. Did you know the informal spaza shops being destroyed in townships in South Africa alone are part of an economy worth nearly 200 billion rands, bigger than the entire market value of Shoprite, the country's largest supermarket chain? So when the small foreign trader is chased out, the question is, who exactly is waiting to walk into that empty market of townships? And the most uncomfortable one, what if the men burning foreigners' shops and the men who owns half the country are not enemies at all? What if one is doing the other's work for free? This has never been a story about foreigners. This is a story about misdirection. And you are the audience. They've already won. Their goal was to make sure an African is attacking an African.
I hate foreigners and the government is doing nothing.
On the evening of October 18, 2007, Lucky Dube was shot in Johannesburg during an attempted carjacking. State witnesses and police reports indicated the killers believed Dube was a Nigerian, a factor that reportedly influenced their decision to pursue him. 19-year-old Ndlamulo Sambo from Limpopo was stabbed and killed on May 31, 2026, recently in Western Cape. His family and local reports stated he was targeted by individuals who thought he was a foreign national. In South Africa right now, if you are an African foreigner, even with papers, they don't care anymore. They just want every African foreigner out of their country. White people, whether from Europe or America, typically occupy the formal economy in South Africa: corporate jobs, management, tourism, tech. They don't open spaza shops in Soweto or sell tomatoes in Alexandra. Black African foreigners compete directly in the same informal economic space where poor black South Africans are trying to survive. Competition at the end of the day triggers resentment. Apartheid psychology was never fully dismantled. Apartheid did not just separate races, it created a hierarchy within black people. Black South Africans were conditioned to see themselves as superior to other black Africans. That's why the Makwere psychology was created. This is my question. What other African country besides South Africa has a degrading term for African foreigners? Makwere. There are roughly 150,000 spaza shops in South Africa. Around 80% of South Africans buy from them. Nearly 40% of the entire country's food spending passes through these little corner stores. Put it all together and this informal township economy is worth over 180 billion rands a year. The shops people look at as just tuck shops are together a bigger commercial price than the largest supermarket empire in Africa. Now, because of that, people are now asking questions. If these spaza shops are no longer there, who is really going to occupy that market? Because it's totally not those who live in townships. They don't have the capabilities. So yes, the structural truth that is hiding in plain sight. The foreign-owned spaza shop is not the enemy of the township. It is the only thing serving the township that the formal economy abandoned. The big retailers did not lose this market to foreigners. No, they never wanted it until it became worth 200 billion rands. Now they want it very much. The township market and the spaza shops owned by foreigners stand in the way. Look at the moves happening right now. ShopRite has been pushing its low-cost brand, Usabe, deeper and deeper into township markets. Pick n Pay has done the same with Boxer. The beverage giant Bevco set itself a target to have its products in 30% of spaza shops in South Africa. Now they want to formalize the informal sector in South Africa. Now I want to be fair because the truth is strong enough without exaggeration. I'm not telling you there's a secret room where executives ordered the burning of shops in South Africa. There is no proven conspiracy and I will not invent one myself. I want to slow down things here because this next part is not an accusation. It is a wound. That is what the world now sees when it looks at South Africa. It's no longer the rainbow nation, but a nation eating its own family. And I have to say this plainly to South Africa. Look at who you have been told to hate. The Zimbabwean working at a construction site. The Malawian guy washing cars. The Somali running a shop in a township that ShopRite was too afraid to enter in the first place. They are not the people who own your country. These are people standing in the same queue as you, the queue of the forgotten. Now look at who you have been told not to touch. The conglomerates that control your food, your banks, your mines, your retail. These are the families that still own the overwhelming majority of the country's land and wealth. 30 years after apartheid ended, they are not in your township. They will never be in your township. And that is precisely why the anger never reaches them. Because anger, like water, runs downhill. The genius of the trick is this. They convinced a hungry man that the cause of his hunger is another hungry man. And as long as the two of them are fighting over the crumbs, neither of them will ever look up at the table. Which brings us finally to the question I promised you at the start of this conversation. The one nobody wants to answer out loud. If this is truly about foreigners, about outsiders, about people who came and took what was not theirs, then Why does the rage stop so neatly at the color line? Let me tell you about a town called Orania. It was founded in 1991 at the very moment apartheid was dying by a group of Afrikaners who did not want to live in a multiracial South Africa. The land was bought by the son-in-law of Hendrik Verwoerd, if I'm pronouncing that right. If that name means nothing to you, learn it. Verwoerd was the principal architect of apartheid itself. The man who designed the machine of racial oppression has descendants who built a town in South Africa, White's only town. Today, Orania has somewhere around 3,000 residents and it is growing so fast. Its leaders speak of planning for 10,000 households. It has its own currency, its own schools, its own private security, its own solar system. So it never has to depend on the national grid. It is, in their own description, an attempt at self-sufficiency. And here is the part you must not look away from. In Orania, the work is done only by white hands. The principle is called own labor. The gardening, the cleaning, the farming, the collecting of rubbish, all of it must be done by Afrikaners. The employment of black workers is by the town's own design, not permitted. Now hold that image next to everything you have just watched. Operation Dudula will march into a township and tear a Mozambican out from behind his counter because they say this space must be reserved for South Africans. But here's a town inside South Africa where a black South African born here with every document in order cannot live, cannot work, cannot be employed. Orania, in Orania. And no mob marches to Orania, no march and march. No politician stands up to scream that that space must be returned to the people. Why? Because Orania is not weak. Orania has lawyers. Orania has a constitutional clause, Section 235, the right to cultural self-determination, negotiated into the founding settlement of the new South Africa. Orania has international friends. When you have lawyers, a constitution, and a foreign superpower whispering your name from a distance, the mob certainly remembers its manners in South Africa. The African migrant and the Afrikaners are both, in a sense, outsiders if you had to look at a bigger picture, to the township majority. One is poor, undocumented, and alone. The other is organized, legally armored, and internationally connected. The mob is only sent after one of them. So let us stop pretending this is about foreigners. It's not. It was never about foreigners. It is about who is safe to attack. And the rule is brutally simple. The rage is always aimed at the weak and never at the strong. The defenders of Orania will tell you they are not racist, that this is a cultural preservation, that minorities everywhere have a right to protect their language and heritage. But whatever you decide about Orania, notice the silence around it, because the silence is the evidence. The silence tells you exactly where the real power sits in South Africa. Let us put the whole machine together now, one last time, and name the end goal out loud in South Africa. The end goal is not a South Africa without foreigners. No. The end goal is a South Africa where the poor are too busy fighting each other to notice who is robbing them. It's like colonization again. There is a bitter irony buried in all of this. Decades ago, during the late apartheid era, South Africa actively relied on skilled foreign professionals, teachers and doctors, especially hospitals and schools in under-resourced areas. The country simply did not have enough trained locals at the time. Foreign labor was not always despised. For a period, migrant entrepreneurship was even admired as a model of resilience and adaptation in South Africa. Today, those same professions, teaching, medicine, small businesses, sit at the center of the resentment happening in South Africa. The migrant in the space of a generation went from important to a thief, from admired to makwerekwere. What makes South Africa's crisis genuinely alarming to human rights observers worldwide is what the government hasn't done so far. In 2019, the government rolled out a national action plan to combat racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. On paper, it sounded serious. It was. When the state tried to act more forcefully, the results have sometimes been worse than doing nothing at all. Take Operation Fiela, a major police operation launched to address undocumented migration. Instead of restoring order, reports found that it became an opportunity for corrupt officers to extract bribes from migrants. The operation that was supposed to restore faith in the system ended up reinforcing exactly the kind of exploitation it claimed to fight. In November 2025, Johannesburg High Court Judge Adams handed down a judgment against Operation Dudula. The ruling was the movement and its leaders were banned from demanding identity documents from foreigners. The court was direct in its findings. It should have been a turning point, but it wasn't. Despite the judgment, the operations continued. As of now, this is no longer just Africa's story. It has become a global diplomatic crisis. And as of now, across the rest of the continent of Africa, telecom giants, banks, retailers from South Africa origin now face a real risk of backlash as the story becomes a global headline news. So at the end of the day, what is happening in South Africa is threatening trade, tourism, and investment relationships. South Africa has spent 30 years building. South Africa, I'm not asking you to love anyone you do not want to love. I am not telling you that every concern about crime or borders or jobs is invalid. Some of those concerns are real, and pretending otherwise insults you. Borders matter, order matters. A government's first duty is to its own citizens, and South Africa's government has failed that duty disgracefully, just like any other African country. When you feel the rage is rising, ask one question: who profits if I am this at the weakest person on my street? The continent that carried South Africa to freedom is watching to see whether South Africa remembers. The continent of Africa will wait patiently for South Africa to remember who they are and where they come from. For now, us, Makwerekwere, must leave South Africa. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this far. I am honestly grateful for the amazing support that you're giving this YouTube channel. I know that by God's grace, we can grow bigger. So please, I'm kindly asking if you can subscribe and like the video.